Hello, hello. Welcome. We're excited to be here with you. We have a special session today. We're going to be talking with one of our partners about the solution certification. They actually just went through the process, so it's nice and fresh in their mind. So it'll be great to hear from them on their experience with it, but also kind of how they intend to use it to better their delivery to the market. As you all know, founded in science, refined by practice, constantly optimized by our network of experts. And today is exactly that. We're having a discussion with those experts that are always informing us on how to fine tune and adjust and make the smart building certification better, and the SBC framework as a whole in how we work together. So today we're going to be joined by Physee, which we've actually been doing a lot of really interesting stuff together. We just did our first academic conference with them. We published a paper recently about smart organizations and how that is so fundamentally important in driving the utilization and the best practices of a smart building. So we're excited to have Andrilla here today to talk to us about the solution certification and how their technology maps up against the framework. But what we thought we would do first is just talk to you a little bit about the ecosystem as a whole, because how does the partner ecosystem and the solution certification integrate with everything else that we're doing, right? So we're certifying buildings, you all know this. And as we certify buildings, buildings have often said, hey, we have gaps, we have challenges, you've identified those with the certification, but now what? How do we actually go from where we are today to where we want to be? And the solution certification was really pushed to us by the building saying, hey, we want to have a way to find the right partners for our situation. And so we dove into it and we launched the solution certification at the beginning of 2022. So we've been at it for about a year, and we've got a lot of really great experience with it now, and we want to share with you a little bit what we're learning and what we've done. We also have the AP program, the assessor program, and these people are also helping the buildings to find those opportunities and those adjustments. And that SBC framework is informing all of that communication together. The SBC framework gives us a language that each one of us can participate in. So the framework, as it works now, is the hub of everything. And once we certify buildings or solutions, then we can do stuff together, right? So it's really about once the certification is not only a stamp for a building or a solution, but once we know what's going on in a building or going on in a solution, we can help each other much more. We can help each other with matchmaking. We can help each other with different aspects in that regard. So the buildings, they really become a living lab, where we can be as we have a benchmarked version of all these buildings being compared to each other, we can really start to dive into what's going on in each, what's going well, celebrate the things that are going well, but what can we learn from others to always improve what we're doing? And the same goes for our partners. We don't expect any one partner or any one solution to cover off the entire framework. That is probably too much. But what we do want to do is we want to find out what's going on with each of our partners so that we can better inform buildings and better inform the market how they can support. And we, as you know, we were founded in science, and that is still our pledge to the market, is constantly doing research and working with academics to do research. And if we know solutions in and out, and we know buildings in and out, we can very easily match research projects to those buildings and to those partners. So that's always kind of what we're part of. And then, of course, the AP community is all of the individuals in the marketplace that are looking to support buildings, solutions, research organizations, and really support the entire ecosystem. So what is the solution certification in detail? I wanted to just give you a little bit of a background of what it was and make sure that you understand kind of the framework that we map it against. But the solution certification, again, is not just about a badge of saying, oh, we're SBC certified. But once we know what is going on in a solution, like Physee, you know, if we read Physee's marketing material and we understand their story from a context perspective, that's one thing. But if we certify and we go into the depth of what that organization is doing, we can much more easily help them tell their story, help them in various discussions in the market, make sure that people really understand what Physee does. And this allows us to do matchmaking more easily, right? So what we're doing with buildings is we're always identifying gaps and opportunities and things to think about and things that can be improved. And if we see those gaps and they match against the Physee solution, that makes it much more easy to bring those two parties together. But going beyond that, so it's not only about solutions to buildings, but it's also about solutions to solutions, right? Because what we see is that every solution has a different approach, has a different focus, and has a different way of doing things. And no solution covers the entire SBC framework. I think that would be entirely too much. But how can we help solutions find each other so that we can focus holistically on smart buildings and the value and the opportunities that smart buildings bring? So if we see two solutions that can have quite a clean integration or working together or complement each other well, then we intend on bringing these together with this solution certification. So just quickly, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the SBC framework in detail and how we're using it for the solution certification. And for us, it's not only about the technology. It never has been. It's not just about the technology. It's what you're doing with it that matters. So we don't only look at, for instance, Physee's tech stack and what they're producing from a technical perspective, but we look at them as a total organization and their approach. So what is their service model? What are the different context aspects, the value activities, the different parts of the ecosystem that they can support? If we look at context from a building perspective, we look at the vertical, we look at the value activities, we look at the value drivers, we look at their motivation for smart, we look at their stakeholder approach. And when we go to solution certify a technology, we're saying, how can you as an organization best support these areas? So not every solution is for every vertical or for every value activity or for every value driver, but how can we best match those together? And when we talk about motivations and stakeholders, we're really looking at Physee's service model as an example to see how they can best support the motivation within an organization and the stakeholders. So thinking about change management and communication management and how do they deal with stakeholders, and how can we make sure that we're not only delivering technology, but we're making sure people are getting the most out of that technology. The governance of a building is all about their leadership, what they intend to do from a maturity level of smart, how they choose their different technologies and what the purpose of that is, and how they have built up their strategy and planning, and where they're going to measure their results and what KPIs they're focusing on. And again, our solution certification goes beyond the technology, and it really looks at how are we helping organizations to actually get more out of these smart technologies? Because in the end, that's what this is about. The framework that we measure buildings on, and this is the core of the framework. We also have a lot on connectivity and infrastructure and integrative design. And again, that context and leadership is a big piece. But the main modules that we're focusing on from a technology perspective is building usage, building performance, building environment, safety and security, and user behavior and collaboration. And of course, what we are looking for in our smart buildings is an integrative design of these types of things. How can we, with the least amount of technology, maximize the impact and the value in all of these different areas? Because in the end, that's really what this is about. But what you see from a building perspective is that buildings often are looking at things with different perspective, different motivations. You'll see some buildings that have a very strong emphasis in building performance, as an example, and safety and security, and maybe less in the other areas. And you might have a building that is very much user-centric and building environment. So the only way that we saw it as able to kind of break that into its components is to break it into these modules. So we certify buildings holistically. We benchmark them total against each other, but we also benchmark on each one of these sub areas, because these sub areas allows us to really focus on the things that are going well, but also to drill down into the opportunity areas. So just to go quickly through it, you know, again, we don't expect every or any solution to cover everything, but what we want to see is where do technologies drive impact in each one of these areas. So building usage, as an example, is how does an organization have the ability to manage and optimize their building based on the technology and the process, so that you can think about your occupancy management, your digital assistants, your amenities, asset tracking, user perception, these types of things. And Physee does quite a lot in this area, so I'm excited to dive into it. The next one is building performance, and this is really about your energy consumption, your BMS systems, your HVAC management, but also how are you monitoring and managing your cleaning and your waste, your machines, your maintenance, and the water that is flowing through the building. Building environment is all about the health and well-being. Again, this is a big place for Physee. We're looking at air quality, thermal health, sound, light, water quality, digital nature, making sure that we're optimizing the health and well-being of our buildings with the use of technology. Safety and security looks at our physical security and our cyber security. It's not only about the physical anymore, it's also about how we're keeping our people and data and digital safe. It looks at access control and surveillance and dispatch, disaster response. And what you will see is that with some of these technologies, you can actually use them for other value drivers as well, sometimes not known to even the technology companies that have produced them. So that's a really interesting thing to always be thinking about. And then user behavior and collaboration is how can people collaborate with each other, but also interact with the building. So thinking about building controls, collaboration, feedback mechanisms, notifications, and planning. So by looking at all of these different modules in a holistic way, and then of course we have an integrative design module that brings all those technologies together, it really allows us to have a holistic view of a smart building, and really dive into kind of how to integrate more easily with different solutions, etc. And without further ado, I'm going to invite Andrilla onto the stage, and we're going to talk about Physee's solution certification, the process that you guys just went through. Hello, hello.
Hello, Nicholas. How are you?
I am good. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Good. So
Thank
you
you
guys are just finishing your solution certification, which I'm so excited to dive into it and see exactly how you guys are doing things. What was your experience till now with it?
It was great. So I really found as you already, thank you. First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was really nice. It almost rehashed my memory of when we were like filling up the form and the survey for the Smart Building Solution certification. And yeah, I really thought that it was quite holistic, and the whole survey was, or the questionnaire was comprehensive enough that it could really cover all grounds of wherever sense can have an impact, and also looking at the back end of it as to what are the other like what basis sense needs to have in order to make sure it's a good solution in the arena of smart buildings and technological providers. So overall, very yeah, it was great. And also in terms of filling up the form, it was, for me, it was, yeah, it was very nice, smooth and easy, very easily understandable, direct and clearly phrased out. That's how I would put it.
Wow,
So that
great.
was very helpful. So it made our life easier as well.
No, and you know, that's interesting you say that. I think a lot of the buildings that we've certified, because they go through actually another perspective on the same framework, right? It wouldn't make
Yeah,
sense to have two separate frameworks. Those two, they're all connected. And
yeah,
they say when they go through their assessment, there's a lot of thinking that needs to happen, and
indeed.
it gets you to think about your innovation and where you're going and what you're doing. And I know we've had a couple conversations about that, and I think that's kind of a happy accident in a way. I don't think that when we set out to create these things that
Yeah,
was one of those intentions. So that's really great to hear.
yeah, indeed, indeed.
But why
And
do you?
also,
Oh, go
yeah, go
ahead.
ahead. No, no, go ahead. It's fine.
Oh, I didn't want to miss what you were going to say, but why don't we go ahead and talk about Physee and the Sense
Yeah,
solution? Maybe you want to just kick us off and share a little bit about kind of where it all came from and what you
yeah.
guys are aiming to do. And then we can come back together and we'll talk about how it impacts the solution certification.
Yeah, sure. Then I'll just start sharing my slides. Okay, I'll share the entire screen. Let's see. I hope you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it
Okay.
perfectly.
Yeah, so since we started, we are a Delft organization, and it started some odd 7 years ago. It was started by Ferdinand and Willem. They were they're true physicists. They came out of TU Delft, and they decided to change the world one building at a time. So Physee, in essence, had initially in the beginning had two parts, or had two streams. The first is the one that is more in the building construction industry, which is we had smart windows per se. And then we were having, we would basically sense data or information, as well as produce energy in the windows, and therefore use it to not only make the building energy neutral, but also use that data for other purposes. So, for example, the building needs that data because a lot of other stakeholders in the building industry were requesting for it. Slowly, we realized that the energy that we first set out to produce using solar panels on the windows was not really enough. So we changed paths to get into just sensing data, so the sensor data that we have at the window, and then using that data to see how we can make the building more energy efficient and comfortable. So that is something like a quick story of how we have morphed a little bit. And sense is essentially that and more now. But before I start getting into sense, which is the product that I work for, as well as we are talking about right now on behalf of Physee, I will go into it a bit later. But then I also want to talk about the other spin-off product that was initially also part of Physee, and that is the the Par Plus coating, which is now known as Photonic because now it has become a spin-off from the Physee company itself, and it is basically a coating that is used in horticulture industry. They put this coating on greenhouses, and it basically enhances the light, the visible light, the blue light, which allows to further improve crop production by 8%. So now I'll just go. So these are the two, as you can see, Physee has two very technical or physics-based two products. And now I'm going to dive into more about Sense, which is a product that is for the building construction industry and is going to, I believe, bring or push the buildings towards making it more energy neutral. So Sense, what are the existing challenges that we face in the building industry? So things need to be, all buildings now have a high necessity to be net zero. They need to be human-centric, so they not only need to be energy efficient, but they also need to be able to provide health, well-being, and comfort to its occupants, because that's of high importance. And then also the building should be able to track and monitor all of its usage of not only energy, water, electricity, etc., but also like how occupants are using the building, the management of the building and its portfolio, etc. Because we, as a construction industry, is being held accountable in terms of ESG, and we need to be able to justify the sustainable claims that we typically make, or the building industry typically makes. So in order to help the building construction industry with these challenges, which are also opportunities for us, we have introduced or launched Sense. It's been already 2 years. For Sense, Sense basically is a smart building platform which uses data from different aspects, or which uses data from different parts of the building. So for example, from its facade, from indoor sensors, it integrates to different building installation systems and uses all of the data to start monitoring and then control the different building installations to provide maximum amount of energy efficiency, as well as a thermal and visual comfort, thereby making sure that there is least amount of productivity loss for occupants. And in the meantime, also monitoring and saving all of the information so that you can reach your ESG goals, and also using the data that we collect all the time. The idea is to also use our building physics simulations and machine learning algorithms to continuously update the system so that the building always stays up to date and performs according to the building usage and the behavior of the occupants inside the building. How do we do that? Or like, how do we make a building using an AI platform sustainable? So first, what we do is we begin with analyzing. So as you can see, there are 4 steps towards making it, how Sense makes a building truly smart and sustainable. So we first start with analyze. So in the beginning, any project that comes in, we do a building performance simulation, which we call a feasibility check. And we really see what is the impact Sense can actually have upfront on that building. Once we understand and see, okay, we can provide a certain amount of energy savings or really dramatically improve the visual discomfort per se in the building, then we go ahead and implement Sense. Once we start implementing Sense, then we have sensors placed on the facade, indoor sensors, etc. And then we start monitoring the building usage. So once the clients are during the building process, once the clients once the building is built, or say for renovated or an existing building, the sensors are placed and Sense is already implemented or deployed in the building, we start monitoring all the building usage, energy consumption, all kinds of different KPIs like the amount of heat coming in or the light coming in, CO2 values, etc., and then start assessing and feeding our building physics platform. So I really want to emphasize on that, because our AI platform or the Sense platform is really dependent on this building physics core, where the digital twin is translated into a building energy model that constantly uses these structured data that comes from these different indoor sensors, etc. And it uses it to actually optimize the control and make and bridge the performance gap between what was initially suggested to what the building actually performs. Once it does that, or it's a continuous process, we start controlling it, because now we really know and we can really control the building as is. And then we start controlling different elements using the occupancy data, for example, that we're gathering. So we control the lighting accordingly, and then we have different advanced control logic. Say, for example, controlling the sun blinds in a stepless way, in which not only improves the lighting conditions or the daylight values inside, but also reduces your lighting energy consumption, for example. Also, the same goes for HVAC controls, making sure that we have adaptive thermal comfort limits so that you have reduced heating and cooling loads during peak hours during summers as well as winters. And then the idea is, once you have all of this working, we have the data to start controlling, and we are already controlling. Over time, we keep optimizing the building. So with all the data, all the manual overrides, whatever we receive from the occupants, as well as from the indoor sensor data, we are continuously, on a periodic basis, keep improving our control logic algorithms, and then therefore making sure that the building is always up to date and it's always future proof in a sense. And in the meantime, this whole thing happens. We are doing the regular reporting, making sure if there are issues with the building in terms of, okay, there are certain changes, there needs to be maintenance, there are maintenance requests coming in for certain building installation. All those things are also provided to the facilities manager so that they can take accordingly take action. So this would be, I would say, a quick summary for
Really nice.
for Physee.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason for the solution certification, right? Is that we're all
Yeah,
trying to make something extremely complicated and make it
yeah,
simple. And
yeah,
that's really hard. It's really challenging, and we're all, I always say for building owners, I feel kind of bad for them sometimes, right? Because if they're in a room with prop tech companies, all of a sudden
yeah,
they get these five different kind of stories that are kind of
yeah,
similar, but how do I decipher what's actually going on
exactly.
inside of them?
Yeah,
So
yeah, and indeed, one of the things why we are different in that sense is that a lot of companies you would see also just would be monitoring, and based on that provide insights. Where we take pride in is that we really try to do that extra step where we are really AI based control systems,
yeah,
a control algorithms provider, where we really try to take that information, structure it well, allow other third parties to integrate if they need to, and then basically have this strong building physics core that can be really used to, on a very scientific basis, you know
yeah,
for a fact that we are predicting things correctly, you are optimizing it, and then suggesting and then automatically controlling the system, so you don't have to necessarily wait for the facilities manager or someone who's there, the controls manager on site, to actually do something about it.
yeah. Yeah, and I think where Physee is also very unique is that building physics,
Yes.
background. It's founded in science, which I love. I think that's
Yeah.
so important and so necessary. Yeah, and I think in the building, in the smart building certification, what we measure actually is maturity of smart, right?
Yeah.
Because what you're hinting at is it's one thing to have a room with a air quality sensor that tells you that the CO2 is too high, right? There's another
Yes,
thing to have that linked into the BMS system, linked into your fresh air, linked into your occupancy usage and how people are using,
exactly.
demanding that the systems change. That's a whole different level of smart.
Exactly, exactly. And it's really we focus on trying to optimizing the existing control logic because you are controlling ventilation using demand driven control as you're mentioning using CO2 sensors, but we're trying to get a step ahead, making sure the occupancy counts are integrated at the same time so that the reaction time of your controls are quicker and the
Yeah,
response time of your ventilation systems are quicker so it doesn't happen like an hour later that
yeah,
the person is gone already and so
yeah.
so
And without that
that's where
human
we're getting at.
intervention, and without that
Yeah,
human intervention, yeah. So
indeed.
what we like to do with the solution certification, right, is that the reason we have those modules, you can
Hmm.
think about it in a way from a stakeholder perspective, right? I think the big challenge we have in smart buildings in general is their stakeholder map is complex. There's
Yeah,
a lot going on. You have your owner, you have your property manager, you have
yeah.
your tenant, you have everything in between. So we
Yeah.
kind of have really looked at it from a stakeholder perspective. So if we talk about building usage, right, and you
Hmm.
could also talk about building performance in that way, but building performance is unique in its own right because that's
Hmm.
sustainability, right? How do we make things more sustainable? But building usage is how do how do I, as a property manager or an owner, um, have control over how my asset is being used?
Yeah.
So if we look at the Physee or the Sense solution, how would you guys help a property manager understand how their asset is being used?
Yeah. So for us, one of the main ways is occupancy count. And I'm not talking just about presence detection, because a lot of the solutions in the market, what they typically would do is do presence detection. So you know that if a person is there or not. But we are really talking about ways to average out the number of people, if there are four people or three or
Yeah.
two in a certain specific space. That is really important for a property manager because when they have over time during the day or also through a season or during work hours have that information, they already know that certain spaces are being used way much more, and
Hmm.
therefore or certain spaces which they had allotted for as a conference or a media room is not being used at all, and then they can also repurpose that room for some other because there's not enough meeting rooms and all meeting rooms are continuously booked. So these kind of so in terms of building usage, one of the attributes that how we help out is basically by providing occupancy count and have that data structured for
Hmm.
the property manager to use because that's important, and then they can use that information to already better optimize their space utilization. So I would say that is where we typically really help.
And they can
Uh,
put those sensors in gyms next to amenities, whatever.
yes. Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. So the indoors, the idea is we have indoor sensors. So we also provide for indoor sensors, or we can integrate with whatever. The idea is that we have a sensor at every 16 or 15 meter square area, and therefore per zone and per space, we really have a good idea or indication of the amount of people coming in and going out. And especially also, for example, during COVID, a lot of people are working from home nowadays, so you all can also have like an occupancy profile over the week and you can already know which times which spaces are being used at a
Yeah.
high rate, and therefore accordingly you can also lease out spaces or rent out spaces better, or they can also have if the property manager or the asset owner or the portfolio manager, they have their own, because a lot of times they have their own third party room booking service or
Yeah.
space management services, they can also plug into our structured data layer to extract that information and use it according to their purposes.
So you can integrate to apps for that kind
Yes,
of stuff.
yes.
And then is the sensor themselves, are those produced by you all, or do you guys just integrate with
So
others?
we have facade sensors. That's basically, I would say, our main strength lies in building performance and health and well-being. The two other, but then in order to be good at those two, we need building usage. Building usage is very important. That kind of fosters the others. We just work with third parties right now to offer indoor sensors, but
Yeah.
we do have facade sensors, which is used for building performance. That are sensors that again senses heat, light, temperature, etc. But they are on the facade, and they are those are what we produce ourselves.
Yeah. Okay.
Because yeah, yeah.
And the ones where you integrate with others, do you guys have relationships already where you can have that
Yes, yes,
one structure? The thing with smart buildings that always is so interesting is, a building can all of a sudden have, 60 different invoices from 60 different companies with 60 different.
indeed.
And that's why that solution certification of finding partners to work together. Hopefully, we can kind of create
Yeah,
holistic smart buildings and invoice it once and contract it once, and that's it. And
exactly. Like have
let us take
one-stop
care of
shop
the messy
to.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So the idea is also that, and then depending upon, because this is a very complex landscape and people sometimes have their own preferred suppliers. So we don't want to be, so ideally we are a very technologically agnostic company. We don't want to create issues. So
yeah,
if somebody has a preferred supplier, then we will just easily integrate with
yeah,
them. If they don't have an idea, like, hey, I don't know where to get these XYZ systems that would make my building super smart, can you help us get it? We are there to help you get it.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we also have the case where we've seen it in buildings where you have 3 or 4 occupancy sensors in a room,
Yeah.
each one doing something different, right?
Yes.
And I think that's something that's really strange about the time we're in as well, is that
Yeah.
as we work in those silos, we end up buying technology in those silos and we build process in those silos. So wherever we can create that integration, it's so critical. And if you have an occupancy sensor already, that data can be used
Exactly.
for a Physee type solution. Yeah.
Exactly. And idea is where we go a bit ahead, or like where we want to emphasize is to bring better benefits is having the occupancy count. But if it's not there, it's fine. We can still work with other sensors and we will find our way. But those are the, if you ask for an ideal Physee solution, then that
Yeah.
would be it.
Yeah.
But I know the world is not the,
No,
yeah,
no.
things are not ideal at times. But then we also have the fallback control logics and fallback what happens so that we can still provide the most accurate solution. And in terms of building usage, and just to elaborate, the indoor sensors that we work with are also like multi-comfort sensors. So it's not
Yeah.
just occupancy detection,
Yeah.
but also it has light, sound, CO2 quality, etc. So it really depends upon what features or what ambitions a building has, and based on that we offer a sensor network or a sensor grid.
Yeah. So we'll come to environment in a second. But
Yeah.
so building performance, how do you guys help that same stakeholder manage their building performance?
Yeah, so that's where it becomes really interesting, and that's why what we pride about the building physics core, right?
Would you say that's the core of the product?
Yes, that's the core of our product. The building physics is the core of our product, and we have this real-time building energy model constantly running in parallel to our digital twin, that is constantly being fed with structured information from the data layer that is being created from all the sensor information that we are listening in, not only from the sensor network, the facade, but also from your shading system, lighting system, your HVAC, the BMS. So we are really trying to read out data from all these different building installation systems. That's why we try to emphasize on integrating, just as Nicholas had, as you keep emphasizing, and then use that data to run real-time building physics models, and then use that information to really accurately predict what the behavior, the control logic of these different buildings installations need to be able to really provide a better energy efficiency. So as I was saying, that we do a feasibility check in the beginning. So that is kind of the building physics simulation that we do to kind of like predict how do you say it? Sorry, the pre-occupancy, baseline, or basically to know with a static occupancy profile. Like those kind of simulations are typically done with a known occupancy profile. Like the building usage is kind of set based on regulation and norms. So we can already promise, say, 9 to 10% of energy savings. Yeah. Then when you install, or when you implement Sense, and then the building physics engine is actually running using the data that's not historical data but real-time data, then you can get even more energy savings and optimizations. So using AI controlled AI controlled logics, we have like model predictive control, etc., all the stuff that you typically hear about. Machine learning, I think it's used so much these days. But by using this, you can already, with very simple things, like you just see that this room, example, one room is not being used at all. Then you can really switch off the ventilation for that space, or not use the lighting there. And in that way, you can save a minimum of 21% of energy. And that immediately helps you in your ESG reporting, etc. So we are structuring all of those quarterly reports for you.
Does that you guys help with the ESG reporting?
Yes. So what we do is we create our own building report, because now we also connect with smart meters, energy meters or electricity meters, etc. Get that data, validate with what's happening in ours, and then use that information and provide the right information so that a company can do its own ESG reporting.
Well, and it's a moving target at the moment.
Exactly.
So,
and
I think we're all doing our best to stay on top of it and to provide to make
exactly
that possible, but it's challenging.
And the problem is every 5 years your building is going to get outdated, right? Of 5 to 10 years, because your threshold for this energy consumption would keep changing. So that's why the idea is you really need to know the building usage very accurately, so that you can really assess the correct amount of energy that is being consumed, where the loopholes are, where energy is being lost unnecessarily, close those gaps using building automation controls, and then also forecast better using AI, because you have historical weather data, present data, as well as weather forecast data to do pre-cooling or preheating, and then get so much more out of your building, and really making sure your building is always at least ahead of your legislation. So you don't have to worry about it.
We have the same thought, right? Our benchmark system is always moving. So like, as we find smarter buildings, your building, which was a platinum today, may not be a platinum 3 years from now. And it's how do we continuously keep that evolution going and circle back and to say, hey, what can we learn from what's happening now, and keep moving. And the technology is going to keep improving, and our knowledge is going to keep improving. So we just need to keep keep
moving. And also I think I did not mention this, is that we are also creating how do you call it, like a roadmap, renovation roadmap, say, or like a consultant. So the idea is, we know you have a list of equipments in your building. And then the idea is to be able to tell you, like, after 5 years or after 10 years, you have a time when you have to renovate and you have to change something, right? So when the warranty of that goes away, and you're already thinking, okay, what kind of renovation strategy I need to do? So when you have this very updated, correct, validated building physics model that is already representing your building accurately, any kind of renovation strategy that you think of, we can immediately implement and check which works best. And therefore, for the optimal cost, or I won't say cheapest, but then like for the optimal cost, what is the right renovation strategy that you can get the maximum out of? at that
Yeah, and
point.
I think you're just getting started on that. I think
Yes,
that's, yeah,
exactly. And
a
there's a
whole
lot
world.
of work to do, but yeah, but it's really
Yeah,
exciting as well. Yeah.
yeah, really nice. So if we move on to like building environment, you guys, you've already touched on it a lot. You monitor air quality, you have on-demand ventilation, you monitor light and sound. You
Yeah.
know, those are things already in there. I guess you, based on what you monitor, is there on-demand adjustment for those things as well?
Exactly. Exactly. So based on what we are monitoring, the part where we take pride in is that we also control. There are already certain control logics in place for different building installation systems, right?
Yeah,
So the shading is being controlled in a certain way. Your HVAC system has a certain set points. Now, because we know that there's nobody inside and the person would come in, we know that every day at Tuesday at maybe 12, the person comes into his office. Then we just pre-cool only before that. And maintaining certain set points that you don't have in order to make sure that we don't need to suddenly cool a lot.
yeah,
Therefore, having the concepts of pre-cool, like peak shaving for, so you don't have a lot of you don't have too much demand at a certain point in time on your HVAC systems or utilities.
yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, we do control, and we also have optimized control than what is standardly available for
Nice.
different systems. Yeah.
And what can you say if we go to the safety and security module? I know that we're already over time, but this is fine, so it's good.
Yeah, so I would say, as you can see, our focus, you showed that pentagonal
Yeah.
map, and indeed we have our strong suits at some points, and some others are less of a
No, and
focus.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, so safety and security, the main things that we really make sure that we have encrypted information coming in through the sensors, and we really make sure that the security of the all the IoT devices and the data lake that we have are secure. But that's where that's where we stop. So, for example, surveillance, camera systems, etc. Those things are not
Yeah.
something. Yeah, for now they're not our part of the
Although
strategy.
in the middle of the night, if somebody came in and broke in, you could see where they went.
Yes. So
Yeah.
thank you for mentioning that. So if there's a change in the status, or if there's a change because you get data or sensor data information for throughout, if there's a change during unoccupied hours or anything, and it's out of the ordinary, of course, the security systems get
Yeah.
alerted.
And are you guys active for the user? Do they have the ability to play into the controls, or do you guys have the philosophy of no, let us deal with that?
So
Because
it's really,
see, you see that changing quite a lot, I think, right now.
yeah,
Where, you know, 5 years ago was all about giving the user control, and
yeah.
now it's all about make sure that the user is happy, but don't give them
Yeah.
the control. What's your guys'
Yeah,
take?
yeah. I think we are somewhere in the middle ground. We typically, in general, the product is made in a way to cater to B2B suppliers. So basically, property managers or the building facilities manager, the portfolio owner. So people in on that level who are controlling per se, they would have their dashboards and the sense insights, and they know the investor who wants to know how much where my money is going. And in terms of users, it's basically manual if they have manual overrides, etc. But in depending upon per project, because we did have projects where we had given user interfaces and we had an app and so there is possibilities for it, but we are not, that's not our focus.
Yeah,
But indeed we take a lot of we pay a lot of attention to manual overrides. So there, of course, they are able to change things if they want to, or they want to change the atmosphere
yeah,
environment that they're working in. That is available. And then in general, we also have systems like narrowcasting, where they can immediately see what is the status of the room. So in terms of air quality, thermal comfort, daylight, visual comfort, etc. So that they're more aware of their surroundings and how
yeah,
much they're using, because that also plays a really important role. Because if you know how smart your building is and how it is working, the occupants also become much more sensible users of energy and resource, etc. So I think in that sense, we try to make sure that we educate the users enough that there is lesser discomfort, but also they're more knowledgeable
So,
about.
and I think that's a good place to try and close it off of like, I mean, we can talk about this for
For
hours. I think this has
yeah.
been really, really fantastic. But how do you guys help your customer make it happen? And how difficult is it to actually make it happen?
So in terms of implementation, so we have dedicated customer support, and we really make sure that once things are implemented, we also have like a day where our whole ops team is there along with the customer support, and really it's like a flyer day, like, hey, this is your system. It's very important for them to know what's going on and how the system works, and dedicate some time in the beginning. There will be,
Yeah.
when a building is smart, there will always be discomfort. We have had, like in past projects, like the watchman or the night guard actually complaining, hey, I don't know why the shades of this is going down at night, it should be up or whatever. And then we explained it to them, like, oh, it's because of this, we're saving energy. And then you could see he became
They need to go
the
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he was very happy about it when he heard that, oh, it's saving energy by going down. This is what happens. And then he became a proponent for us. And then he
Yeah.
was proud about his building, and then telling others that, my building does this, and then it saves energy by the automatically changing the blind heights and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's where, in terms of to make it happen, we really make sure that the ops team, of course, is there. And after the project is completely implemented, with the construction site stakeholder that also spend time with the controls and the facility manager, as well as the occupants, to really make them aware of the possibilities of their smart building.
Yeah, I think that change management is completely underestimated,
Yes. Yeah.
and how powerful it is. I think, we see two very distinct building owners right now, right? You have the one that is building with the plans to hold on to it, right?
Yeah.
And because they are planning to hold on to it, they know exactly what kind of technology they're going to put in and how they're going to use it and how they're
Yeah.
going to inform their organization.
Yeah.
The other one is building it for the purpose of selling it or distributing it to somebody else. And I think it's completely underestimated how much of that technology solution or that functionality is just lost in
Yeah.
that transfer,
Exactly.
that change management. So yeah,
Exactly.
uh, so do you guys help in that regard as well, or have you
When
seen a
they
transfer of a building as an example?
Yeah, so transfer of a building, that's where I was mentioning the soft landing of
Yeah,
how the different ops team and everybody needs to be there. And
yeah,
we also typically, right now, we have a few projects that was with the ones that have been realized. Some of them have been that the portfolio owners kept it, but still, but then when it changes to tenant, that's the whole idea, that we are
yeah,
there when the tenant is there, when the tenant comes in, to be able to give them sort of a soft landing, or how do you call it, like a presentation, just to like
yeah.
make sure that they know what is there and what is not. So there is a
What's
dedicated,
possible? Yeah,
yeah, what's possible. So there is dedicated customer support to make sure everybody is onboarded, or every tenant for that specific building and gets onboarded. Because for us, it's a subscription. So
yeah.
we have a subscription policy yearly. The tenant is going to pay for it, or the developer, if they keep it in their portfolio, they're going to they're going to pay for it. So therefore, yeah, then we are obligated anyway. So we really, of course, make sure that everyone's onboarded correctly
And
with the
is the
system.
technology, is it challenging to implement, or is it, how long does it take
Um,
building up
in
and
terms
running?
of in terms of sensors, etc. For example, for new build, it's not, because everything is new.
Part of
That
the process?
having,
Yeah,
yeah, it's easier because everybody is doing this IoT, and it's easier for us to integrate the same language. For existing buildings, it becomes harder. For, say, for example, for indoor sensors, it's fine, but say, for example, having to integrate to a BMS system or an HVAC control system, that becomes the hard part. So when you're trying to integrate to a different building installation systems, like shading, lighting, HVAC, that's the hard part, but we have to go through it.
Got to
And in
do
the
it.
end,
And it's
integrate.
worth it in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. Do you have any closing remarks, maybe advice to a building owner who's just getting started on their journey? What do they do? How do they get started?
Yeah, I think really keeping an eye on this whole smart building initiative, or the whole smart building wave that's actually coming, ride it, because this is going to become the norm. And being very aware about how to have or provide an integrated, in the end, if you can provide an integrated building, your investments in future is going to be, at least it's going to be minimized. So I think it's in that sense, I would say that it's not about just putting the brick and mortar and there you go, but also think ahead for the building, because for any coming developer, we still have a responsibility towards the world and the society as to what we're putting forth. And if we have technologies that can help us make it better, more efficient, and reduce its footprint, keep a better track and monitor the energy flow and material flows better, then use it.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant way to end it. And thank you so much for joining us. And
Thank you so much, Nicholas.
I look forward to reviewing and seeing your certification come out. And
Indeed. Looking forward to the partnership as well. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Yeah.
Take care. Bye.